That's the first indication that they're just guessing and don't know what they're talking about. And that, ladies and gentlemen, by itself is reasonable doubt. That means nothing, Your Honor. The fact that it's damaging, I'll concede that. It's inadmissible. And the status of this impression that there is a catch-all, we're only trying to seek justice and do good exception to all the rules of evidence, and there is no such thing. If it's admissible, admit it through an admissible procedure. You don't try and end around the court's order and the case law by coming in on some pretext and doing exactly what I told the court would happen and create an entire prejudicial fiasco and introduce inadmissible evidence into the record.
I intercepted it on a court-authorized wiretap through the state through Broward County. It was a wire authorized by Judge Siegel in a gang investigation. During that investigation, there was conversations about placing a bounty on my head, upwards of $50,000. And since then, we've, as I stated before, recovered several cell phones in that investigation, other narcotics investigations, firearms investigations, an investigation in South Carolina that is tied to Broward, where photographs of deputies were sent with my name attached to it.
The YNW Melly case has been nothing if not interesting from the get-go. There's been plenty of unanticipated twists and turns that have been brought forward by those close to the case on both sides of the matter. The defense is doing everything possible to say that YNW Melly is innocent, while the prosecution is doing everything to show that Melly killed two people that he was close to. We're into the second full week of the trial and things continue to get weird, with questions about gang affiliation, guns, and DNA evidence being a focal point for many. We'll break it down for you, but first be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an upload from us. And with that being said, let's get straight into the video.
So this is one of those cases that didn't let anybody down in terms of that. And I think when I originally had this case, I thought that there was a lot of holes in the state's case. And I think that it's being highlighted by the defense counsel now, all those different holes that are in the state's case. And I think that that's going to be a very tough thing to overcome.
Gunshot wounds. During the second week of Florida rapper YNW Melly's trial for the two murders of his fellow YNW collective rappers, the prosecution started to focus on the fatal wounds. Assistant State Attorney Christine Bradley called Dr. Rebecca M. McDougal and Dr. Adrian Botter, the pathologist who performed the victims' autopsies, to the stand on Tuesday. Bradley said the direction of the gunshot wounds showed demons fatally shot Christopher Juvie Thomas Jr. and Anthony Sackchaser Williams on October 26, 2018 in Broward. McDougal said she performed Williams' autopsy. "There's no way for me to tell you what the time frame between wounds was," McDougal said. Bradley had argued that the left to right direction of some of the gunshot wounds would contradict the allegations that they had been the victim of a drive-by shooting. McDougal said she did find that one of the projectiles entered the left side of Williams' neck, traveled through his brain, and exited through the top right of his head. McDougal said this left to right shot was fatal. The jury had already seen surveillance video showing that when they left the New Era recording studio in Fort Lauderdale, Williams was in the front passenger seat of the Jeep Compass, Demons was in the left rear seat, and Thomas was in the right rear seat. Sauter said she performed Thomas's autopsy. She said Thomas also suffered a fatal shot to the head, and the entrance wound was on his left cheek, and the path was from left to right. The heart was not beating at the time this wound was inflicted, Sauter said about one of the gunshot wounds Thomas suffered. The video also shows Cortland Bortlen Henry driving the gray Jeep. Another video shows Henry arriving at Memorial Miramar Hospital, and Thomas, age 19, and Williams, age 21, were dead inside the Jeep Compass, according to the prosecutors. The jury also saw a video of Henry telling a Miramar detective that they had been the victims of a drive-by shooting. He said the shooting was on Miramar Parkway, and the shooters had fired at the Jeep's passenger side. Detectives reported an expert's bullet trajectory analysis showed the right-to-left path of the bullets that Henry had described did not match the left-to-right pattern of the wounds, according to prosecutors. Jurors also learned that cell phone data showed them on Pines Boulevard and Pembroke Road, in a desolate area where detectives did find evidence of a shooting, according to prosecutors. Bradley said this is where Henry and Demons staged the shooting. So what we have here is a conflict of stories. If Melly and Cortland's tale was correct, then the ballistics for the drive-by would match the wounds, and yet that doesn't appear to be the case at all. Not that this definitively proves the prosecution's case, for reasons we'll get to soon enough, but it does help them show that someone is lying, or seriously misremembering what happened that night, and that can put some serious doubt in the jury's minds. Gang affiliation, Young Thug, French Montana, and several other rappers were named in text read in court during the YNW Melly trial to prove the Florida native was affiliated with the Bloods gang. This is something that the prosecution has been trying to do since the trial began. Prosecutors accused Melly of being associated with the Bloods and explained that this was the alleged motive for the murder of his two friends, Christopher YNW Juvie Thomas Jr. and Anthony YNW Sack Chaser Williams. Detective Danny Polo explained that gang members use rappers to bring in money and fame, and in return give support so they can get into certain venues. He then read out multiple text messages sent between GBK gang members Goon and Hook. He then read out multiple text messages sent between GBK gang members Goon and Herc to young Sack Chaser Howard that mentioned Young Thug, Uzi Badass, French Montana, Jewel Santana, Quando Rondo, and more. The prosecution obtained 123 text messages to help prove that Melly was a member of the Bloods. According to reporter Bryson Pohl, Detective Polo alleged that Jules is an active Bloods gang member based on a text thread with Goon, but couldn't confirm or deny if Montana was also a part of the gang. Another text thread, "Your beloved was set," is at Young Thug pushing now, and also added that Quando Rondo quote lame ass hated on a previous message. Detective Polo also believed that YNW Melly was being recruited by two different G-Shine Blood gang members based on text message conversations of Gino and Herc. Also, a text GBK member Goon sent Melly hours after the murders of YNW Juvie and Sack Chaser that read, "You straight? I just heard what happened last night," was also read in court. Now, as the defense team noted, just because Melly did gang signs all the time, as many pictures showed, or had friends who were Bloods, doesn't mean that he was one himself. That is very true, as association doesn't necessarily mean you're a part of a crew. However, the detective in question is correct in that these are plenty of rappers who use their musical status to help gangs get influence or access to places they couldn't get on their own. Many rappers use their songs to help the gang too in exchange for influence, and the gang helping them make money. If the prosecution can further tie Melly to the gangs and establish why it might be a motive for murder, then they might have something big on their hands. But until then, it's all circumstantial, a reoccurring theme in this trial so far. The masked witness. A masked witness took the stand last Thursday to testify in the murder trial of Melly, spooking at least one juror and raising the possibility that the defendant is being deprived of his rights to a fair trial. The witness was Danny Polo, the detective we just talked about and who works undercover. Broward Circuit Judge John Murphy permitted Polo to testify with his face covered because Polo has received death threats from people unrelated to the Demons case. Undercover officers have occasionally been permitted to testify with their faces obscured in other trials. But here's the thing. Melly's side didn't like that the rapper nor the jury couldn't see the face of the officer. The state could have chosen any expert in gangs, the defense lawyer said. They elected to choose one who has threats against his life that don't concern this case, and who's undercover. They've precipitated this problem. In other words, they should have brought in someone else to testify, but instead, they bring in the one person who can have an excuse and wear a mask so that he can't face Melly face to face. The mask also caused problems for one juror, who passed a note to the judge late Thursday morning expressing anxiety over the witness because she once witnessed a crime committed by someone wearing a mask. The judge later said that Polo would take off the mask while delivering testimony, but many online jumped at the notion of a masked witness because of how weird it looked. You can understand both sides of the issue, as a witness shouldn't have to fear death just by testifying, but by hiding the identity of the person, you're not being fair to the person they're testifying against. It's a hard thing to balance for sure. The gun text. Christine Bradley, who is the prosecutor for the state of Florida, showed a set of text messages to the court on Friday that were allegedly sent between the rapper and his mother months before the murders of his two victims. The text revealed that the rapper asked his mother for a gun back in August 2018, just 2 months before Thomas and Williams were killed in October 2018. "Get me a Glock ASAP. read one of the texts, "Let go now. I just don't want no illegal gun." The prosecution claimed that YNW Melly asked for the gun because a dispute arose between YNW Sack Chaser's mother and sister, but it's unclear whether YNW Melly was also involved in the dispute, or whether he wanted the gun for the benefit of the parties involved in a dispute. While a Broward County Sheriff's Office ballistics expert, George Bello, previously testified that a .40 caliber shotgun was used to kill YNW Sack Chaser and YNW Juvie, the defense has claimed that the texts weren't from Melly's phone, and that the gun involved in the murders didn't belong to the Murder on My Mind rapper. What's more, YNW Melly ultimately settled for a Glock 40 or 19, per the text messages, but it's unclear which of the guns, if any, he actually acquired. But the fact that he was asking for a gun at all should give the jury pause. Plus, he noted he didn't want an illegal gun. That's oddly specific, as that seems to indicate that he might be caught with a gun and have to explain it. While it may be hard for the prosecution to prove that things went down exactly as the text shows, the fact that they have those texts at all were a big deal, and definitely put the defense on the back foot. But then again, there are some people claiming that it's the prosecution that's on the back foot, because they haven't shown certain key pieces of evidence that would definitely put Melly behind bars. Lack of crucial evidence. So here's the deal. During the most recent day at trial, a tweet went around saying the following: YNW Melly's DNA wasn't found on or in the Jeep where the shooting took place until they recently found it this month on the door handle of the car. There was also no gunfire residue found on YNW Melly. At the crime scene, .40 caliber bullets were recovered, but to this day there's no firearm and evidence known to be the murder weapon. When you hear some of this, you could see why those on Melly's side are excited. This is key evidence that could prove or disprove that he was involved in the murders. There are even rumors that the case could get dismissed because of it. But here's the rub. No one else is reporting this that we could find. Furthermore, some of these statements aren't as simple as they appear. For example, the DNA evidence not being in the car is odd, but not as important as you might think, as there is video evidence of Melly being in the car with Cortland and the victims. Plus, they did find the DNA evidence to prove he was there, so that's all they need. As for the murder weapons, while that is bad that they don't have it, Melly was stated by himself and Cortland to have gotten out of the car after the drive-by they claimed happened to clear his head. That's more than enough time to get rid of a weapon. Plus, he could have gotten rid of the gunshot residue in multiple ways with the time he had. So let's not rush to conclusions about the case just yet. Until it's dismissed or a jury renders its verdict, things can still go either way. And there you go, everyone. A look at everything that's been happening recently with YNW Melly and where things might go from here. Do you think that this case is about to blow wide open in Melly's favor, or has the little ground he's gotten for himself about to disappear? What do you think will happen as the trial continues on? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.